We'll get started nice and quickly because I know this is such a popular event tonight. So hello. So my name is Luke, Joint Chief Executive at the TSA, and this talk tonight is all about behaviours that can be challenging in TSC and approaches to working with them. We're absolutely delighted to have members of the Bath TSC clinic with us tonight. So we have Kirsten and also Jodie, who I'll let themselves introduce themselves in a second. Finally, just remember that this is an understanding and caring space, I would say. So everyone on this call understands TSC and the massive impact that it can have on people. So do please make the most of that. So I'm going to stop talking now so we can hear from the people everyone who's actually here to listen to and talk to. So I'll hand over to Kirsten and Jodie.
Cool. Thank you. So I'm Kirsten and I'm the specialist nurse in the TS clinic in Bath, and I've been there probably for 8 years now, I think, scarily. And before that, I worked with children with learning disabilities as a community nurse. And Jodie?
Hello, I'm Jodie Harlow. I'm a clinical psychologist, also based at the TSC clinic in Bath. Nice to meet everybody.
I'm just going to share my screen now, which we've practiced before, so I'm hoping it's going to work. Yay!
Yeah, we've got that now.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, so as Jodie started to say, our first slide really is what our hopes of the session were. So what we're hoping that you would want from our session and what we hope we'll be able to offer to you. So we're going to go through a bit about what are behaviours that challenge, thinking about understanding why those behaviours might be happening, which is really key then to be able to go on spotting the early warning signs, and then what methods and strategies we might be able to use to help manage those behaviours that challenge, and then looking at where you can go to for support, whether that's from kind of services that should be available to you or any resources, kind of web resources and things that might be helpful. And as Luke said, we're hoping to have some time, well, there'll be time for questions at the end. Unfortunately, what we won't be able to do, I think, is answer very specific advice for individuals. So I'm hoping the questions are kind of a more general nature that we'll be able to answer. And also we do appreciate, obviously, through our work in the clinic in Bath and our knowledge and working with people with TSC, that we know that people with TSC will have a wide range of needs and abilities. So not everything that we present will be relevant either to you or to the person that you care for, but we're hoping that there will be something that everyone can take away from the session. So I'm going to hand over to Jodie for our next slide.
Just to start, as Kirsten said, really, we're just thinking about what are behaviours that challenge. So we know that TSC is associated with a wide range of behavioural and psychological difficulties. And I'm sure most of you will be familiar with the TANs, so the TSC associated neuropsychiatric disorders, and the umbrella that kind of consists of. So I guess today we're mainly thinking about the behavioural section of that. Which includes things like aggression, so hitting, throwing, potentially self-injury, for example, maybe hitting one's head or eye poking, things like verbal abuse, maybe tantrums, destruction, so throwing items, or other behaviours that can also be challenging, like running away. So in terms of the TAND umbrella, we know from the research that individuals with TSC, that some of these difficulties might be more prevalent for people with TSC, and these can sometimes be associated with behaviours that challenge. So, for example, not all the time, but potentially things like difficulties with low mood or anxiety or autism or ADHD, or having an intellectual disability may also impact on our behaviours and what our behaviours include and if they are challenging. So today we're hoping to mainly cover the behavioural section of it, but also having an awareness that all of those other factors can absolutely influence how individuals see the world, how we all see the world, and how that might impact on our behaviours as well.
So our first thing really is to understand why the behaviours happen, and if there's a takeaway message I think from this is that from this whole talk really is that there's always a reason for that challenging behaviour. So thinking about the behaviour and the reasons behind it, and thinking of it as a communication, it really is key to supporting the person that you care about, and hopefully then reducing the instance of behaviour in the future. So the kind of things that might be reasons that a person might display challenging behaviours are things like that need to feel in control. You and I probably have much more control of our environment than, for example, someone with a learning disability might have much less control of the environment, and those behaviours that they display are a way of kind of regaining control for them. It might be to get needs met. We've all got our own needs. We might mainly we can get our own needs met ourselves. If you've got less control over your environment, it's much harder for you to get your kind of needs met. Things like being ill or in pain will also have an impact on behaviour. Feeling hungry, thirsty. Then in times of stress, things then something that you will be able to cope with in normal everyday life, suddenly you can't cope with anymore, and you just kind of like really tip over into kind of displaying those behaviours. Changes, whether they're unexpected changes or planned changes either, can be a reason behind some challenge behaviour. Feeling tired, sensory issues, so either kind of avoiding particular sensory situations, so for example very noisy, busy environments, or actually seeking certain sensations. Maybe actually hitting self might actually feel okay, and people might like the sensation that gives them, but also causing a problem. And things like difficulties at work and school can certainly have an impact on behaviour. So people, it's almost like they can hold themselves in and manage for the whole time at school, even if it can be quite stressful for them, but suddenly you get home and a tiny little thing will tip you over then into kind of presenting some challenging behaviours. So you've done all right at school, you've got home, and suddenly you can relax. So when someone says, oh, can you go and put your drink in the kitchen, everything explodes. And it's not because asking someone to do something caused that behaviour, it was all the other little things all day that built up that kind of stress. And it's similar kind of difficulties with friendships and relationships. So thinking about it, we will have all displayed challenging behaviour in our lives. The terrible twos, we all had that, but we've all since then managed to develop communication and been able to get our needs met, and also to learn those skills of being able to cope when needs aren't being met. And just as a little scenario really, imagine kind of you're feeling a bit tired, it's the end of the day, you've got a headache, but you have to go and catch a train. You've got to go and catch a train, go and visit someone or get home from work. So we say to ourselves, what can I do to make that better? Actually, maybe I could just go and have a rest for a little bit before I have to go out and have that train. Maybe I can take some paracetamol. When I'm on the train, I can use my headphones, I put my earbuds in, I can shut out everyone else around me. And we can also say to ourselves, actually, that train journey might be difficult, but it's only an hour. I can cope with that. And then when I get off the other end, it will be over. But for someone with a severe learning disability, they might not have actually developed those skills to either identify what's wrong and causing them the problems, or to work out how to make it better for themselves. And so what they do then is to display these behaviours to kind of make that situation feel better for themselves. So to support us in understanding why those behaviours happen, it can help sometimes to record, to make a note of what's happening at the time. So you may, I'm sure some of you at least will be familiar with these charts called an ABC chart. And this is just one of the techniques that people use to record behaviours, and then that might help us to identify why it's happening and identify those triggers. Because actually when you're there in the moment dealing with it, it's much harder to think about why this is happening. But if you go away, kind of write things down, once you've done it a few times, you actually look, oh, actually that behaviour is always happening at around 11:45. Maybe the person's hungry, and maybe actually we just need to bring lunchtime a bit earlier, for example. So our ABC charts are called ABC because they talk about antecedent behaviour, consequence, but an antecedent is just thinking about what was going on before the behaviour occurred, writing a description of actually what happened, And then maybe what happened afterwards, what was the result or the consequence of the behaviour, both for that person and for the people around. And that then might help us to kind of spot those patterns and triggers, and then use some of our strategies we'll talk about a bit later to help manage that for them. So we've just got an example here of a completed ABC chart. So the writing's a bit small actually, so I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it, but it's just, and it's got different people in it, but it's looking at this, for example, this top one, we're looking at, you know, Lucy sitting in this, they're completely made up scenarios. Lucy's sitting in the lounge at home by herself. Her mum's in the kitchen and her mum's helping her brother with his homework. Lucy calls out for her mum, but mum just says, I'll be there in a minute. And then Lucy throws the remote control at the television. And then the consequence of that is actually mum goes into the living room and stops helping Lucy's brother with his homework. And mum talks to Lucy, asks if she's okay. Another example might be on the second one down, Tom, who's in his bedroom, he's feeling a bit hungry, it's nearly lunchtime. So he comes down to the kitchen to find his dad, who's outside in the garden busy. So Tom picks up a bowl that's sitting on the counter, the kitchen counter, and just throws it out at his dad. Dad comes in, gives Tom some lunch. The next one, we're thinking about this young person called Jennifer. She's at school, she's queuing up for dinner, and the dinner's a bit delayed. Everyone around her is talking. The students are all waiting, the noise is increasing, it's still getting a bit much. Jennifer hits another student on the arm, then she's taken out the dining hall. So all the time we're looking at these behaviours and seeing what's going on for the person at the time, what they might be trying to communicate with their behaviours, and then thinking about what we can do then to help them to have that communication, help them have their needs met in a way that is much nicer for everyone around them. Hand back to Jodie.
Okay, so next we're looking at what can we do to reduce the likelihood of behaviours occurring. So the first thing we can do, as Kirsten mentioned in our ABC chart, is try to identify those triggers. So for triggers, it's important to consider what happened before the behaviour occurred, and trying to give a time frame around that can be quite hard because it might be things that have built up, for example, throughout the day, or it might be something that's just happened kind of 5-10 minutes beforehand. Obviously, that will depend on the situation, on the behaviour, on the individual. But good questions to ask can be who was there, what was happening, where was the person, where were other people, and when did it happen? What is there a particular time of day, a particular day, etc., or any kind of common themes that you notice. So we know that all behaviours happen for a reason, but it can be really hard to work out and understand what the causes are. And we do usually recommend looking at one behaviour at a time, because it might be different things for different behaviours, and it might be different things for the same behaviours at different points. So that's why we like to use ABC charts or similar techniques to try to identify those antecedent events. So some common reasons for challenging behaviours may include things like to gain attention, potentially, in order to try to get something like maybe a drink or something to eat. And we often refer to that as something tangible. It could be to escape or avoid something or someone. It may be in relation to sensory needs, so whether that's sensory seeking or avoiding the sensory overwhelm, potentially, like bright lights or loud noises. We also know, as Kirsten mentioned before, that challenging behaviour can be related to emotional distress or mental health difficulties, such as anxiety, low mood, symptoms of trauma, and also physical pain. So also times of change, disruption or stress, challenging behaviour can increase around those times too. So it's important to try to identify the cause of behaviour. And as we said before, that can be different for each challenging behaviour displayed. I think it's important to say as well that Individuals with learning disabilities may also have or develop a mental health difficulty such as low mood or anxiety, and this may or may not make the challenging behaviour more difficult. So if there are concerns around the possibility of somebody having a mental health difficulty alongside a learning disability, or a physical health difficulty, it's really important to explore that with healthcare professionals as appropriate, just to explore what might be contributing to the challenging behaviour or not. So just looking on to the next slide. So this is the previous slide that Kirsten talked through, but it's also got another column on the end of what do you think the person was trying to communicate with their behaviour. So as we said, all behaviour is often a form of communication in some way, even if we don't directly know what that might be initially. So with the first example, with Lucy being in her living room on her own and her mum being in the kitchen, she calls for her mum. She says she doesn't respond immediately, so she throws the remote control and then mum goes immediately. So the function of that behaviour may be to get attention. So it's not bad to want attention. As humans, we all like attention often. But for a variety of reasons, some people might learn that behaving in a particular way is a reliable way of attracting some form of attention. So in that scenario, that worked particularly well for Lucy. So that's something that might be learned for the future. It might not be, it might just be a one-off occurrence, but it's a potential. In the second scenario, as Kirsten described, so Tom is in his bedroom, he feels hungry, he comes downstairs and his dad is outside. So he picks up the bowl, throws it at his dad, and then dad comes and gets him some lunch. So his need has absolutely been met in that scenario because he's got his food and he was hungry. And so the function is that he gets something, so that's described as tangible. Again, it's normal to want food if we're hungry or a drink if we're thirsty, but problems might occur if people learn to act inappropriately, potentially to get things, or in a challenging way to get things. The third situation, as we said, is so Jennifer's at school, she's in the queue, everyone is talking, lunch is delayed, noise increases. Jennifer hits another student on the arm and then she is taken out of the dining hall. So the dining hall was too noisy and too busy for Jennifer initially. When she's taken out when she hits someone. So she gets away from the noise and she gets away from the busyness. So the function of that behaviour can work quite well in terms of escape or avoiding that scenario. And some people don't like those scenarios or would prefer to be left alone, and so people can behave in a way that helps them to avoid or escape the situation that they don't like or that they find difficult. And sometimes a challenging behaviour can be an effective way of getting out of that situation. And then the final one here that we've chosen to just display those four, but like we say, there are other reasons why challenging behaviours occur as well. These are not the only ones. Is thinking about the sensory element. So Josh is at home in the garden. He's been sitting for 20 minutes. He rocks back and forth and hums loudly. He likes the feeling he gets from that, and learns that when he has nothing to do, he can stimulate himself by rocking and humming. So that's very much a sensory behaviour. And so behaviours can be internally rewarding or self-reinforcing. So what is happening around the person is also as important as what is happening inside the person, and important to consider. Lovely, thank you.
So then when we've kind of identified what the reason behind the behaviour might be, what the behaviour is trying to tell us or communicate, we can think then about what kind of strategies or methods might support the person to avoid these behaviours happening in the future. So we're going to talk about these in a kind of green, amber, red, blue way, with green first being our proactive strategies. So they're the strategies that will help the person that we care about to stay happy and calm as much as we can. So these are the strategies that will help prevent the behaviour occurring in the first place. So thinking back to kind of some of the reasons for those behaviours, things like maybe escape, maybe something like amending the environment around might suit the person better. So for example, reducing noise, avoiding busy situations if they're triggers for behaviour, maybe changing the lighting or the decoration or the clutter that's around. And just thinking about, for example, if someone actually finds going to a noisy, busy shopping centre a very difficult thing to do, but sometimes it's a necessary thing. Thinking about maybe what time of day you do that. So instead of going to Cribs near me on a Saturday afternoon, we might go on a weekday morning, early in the morning when it's much quieter and it's just easier for someone to cope and manage that. Also thinking about routine and structure for a person. So we've talked about how people might need to feel in control of their environment, and if they don't, then that can cause a trigger for behaviours. And actually having that routine and structure helps people to know what's happening, and gives them some of that control. So things that might be useful, things like visual plans of the day, making sure things happen in a predictable way if you can. If changes are going to be happening, can we plan that in advance? Can we let the person know that a change is going to happen, and maybe gradually making that change happen? And also maybe giving choice to people, and all of these things help to reduce anxiety and help to prevent those behaviours. Another thing to consider is boundaries for that person. So letting people know what's expected of them, and using a variety of communication methods for that. So it might be that you have a rules chart at home that all the family follow, but we do that in a visual way for someone who can't read, or that might help them to understand. And also very much using positive language. So instead of saying don't do that, telling someone what you want them to do, because actually that's much easier to understand depending on someone's communication level. Understanding don't do this, it's very hard, whereas if you tell someone we want hands still or sit down, it's much easier than saying stop hitting. It's much harder to understand than saying stop hitting. And then possibly some people rewards might work, so rewarding the behaviours that we want to see more of, and making sure people can make that link between the behaviour and the reward. But also it might be something, the rewards might be something that just lets someone know that a situation that they're not very happy with is actually going to end. So often some of our patients will come to clinic and with their family or with their carers, and they're going to McDonald's afterwards, or they're going to the cafe to get some cake afterwards, and that's just about letting someone know really that yes, we've got this hospital appointment, it's not your most favourite thing, but we're going to do something afterwards. It's not going to last forever. Look, we're at the hospital, next we're going to McDonald's, for example. And then a really important part of our proactive strategy is really a skill building. So if someone, I've lost my thread, so skill building, so increasing the skills that someone has so that they can either get their needs met in a more appropriate way without having to display some of these challenging behaviours, or actually managing to meet those needs for themselves and not having to ask for someone. So that might be communication skills, so supporting someone to be able to ask for a drink, or to go and get the cup and hand it to you when they want a drink rather than throwing it at you, for example. Or it can be practical skills. Can we actually teach that person to make the drink themselves? Can they get the cup out the cupboard, add the squash, add the water, and do that for themselves? Other skills that are useful to develop are things like just being able to either wait or keep themselves entertained. So that can be really, really hard for people. So often this is really much building on small increments, so actually supporting someone to learn to wait for a minute, using a timer or using a visual cue, and then just increasing that time, and always making sure at the end that the person gets the attention, whatever it was they want, that they've waited 5 minutes and now they get the attention. Or learning to keep themselves entertained, maybe having a box of small activities that someone can do independently, and again using a timer, letting someone know just for 5 minutes while this timer runs through, you're going to do something by yourself, and then I'll come back and I will talk to you, or we'll do something together. And another important skills, if we can, to help support our people to learn, is relaxation skills, whether that's something like calming breaths, if you're able to do that, maybe just making your muscles go floppy and relaxed, just the kind of skills that just in the moment might help someone to kind of relax a bit, reduce their anxiety. But these skills are things that are hard to use in the moment, so it really is learning these skills when people are happy and calm, and really practicing them, so that when we get to kind of the things we're going to talk about next, they can use those skills for themselves.
So now thinking a little bit about recognising early warning signs. So this is when completing detailed ABC charts can be really helpful, as they can help us identify any common early warning signs a person might show prior to behaviours escalating. So these are important in all cases of challenging behaviour, but also I think especially important when challenging behaviour escalates quickly. So it feels like things go from 0 to 10 in 5 seconds, because it might give you that extra moment just to notice what's happening for that person, and to support the person prior to behaviours escalating. So examples could be, there'll be a huge range of examples, but just some to mention are things like pacing, so walking up and down, maybe going red in the face, noting if somebody's kind of tensing their muscles a little bit, maybe in their shoulders, their hands, anywhere on their body, squeezing their hands, maybe being quieter or potentially being louder, maybe withdrawing a little bit, or kind of leaving a busier situation, leaving the room potentially, and also maybe displaying repetitive behaviours. As well as the early warning signs, it's also important to consider at that stage if the person might be ill, whether they might be in pain, whether they're in discomfort, because obviously then the way that you approach the person and the behaviour might vary. So then thinking about the active strategies. So this is linked to supporting a person when we spot early warning signs. So potentially after you've completed a few ABC charts, if you start to notice a common theme for yourself or a particular person that you're caring for, so things that we can do at those moments is giving clear, positive instructions of what we would like them to do. So as Kirsten mentioned earlier, so telling the person what you would like them to do in a calm, a clear, and a positive manner. For example, put down the remote control. And making it very clear what you would like them to do in that behavior. Also acting calmly. So it's likely in that scenario that a range of people might be noticing stress increasing in their body. So it's important as much as possible to try to be calm in those situations, because if the more people that become distressed, potentially the more behaviours may escalate, and it might be a more distressing situation for everybody. Other things that are important are distraction and prepared activities, and these are very much centered around the person's likes and what comforts them. And I think it can be really helpful to have these planned in advance so that they're easily accessible, so you can use them immediately as you need to. In situations where you know things are likely to escalate, it's really hard if you've kind of got to run around the house to collect the things that you know that person responds well to. So if you can have them in a box somewhere easily accessible, that can be beneficial. Of course, responding to the person's needs, so whether that's hunger, thirst, comfort, sensory needs, and trying to have an awareness of that at the same time. If the person needs space, providing that space is needed, as is safe to do so. And also, again, if it feels safe, potentially move into a different environment. So whether that's outside or to a different room, just because sometimes just that change of environment can be enough to kind of change the situation slightly and give that person a little bit of a change of scenario to reset a little. As I mentioned before, focusing on one behaviour at a time if possible. And also considering your proactive green strategies as well as needed. So the earlier we notice that behaviours may be escalating, the quicker we can put strategies in place to hopefully reduce the likelihood of them escalating further. So now thinking a little bit about a coping box. So this is just an idea, and it could be an very individualized coping box for a person. So there are no rules as to what should be in it. And if you or the person you care for would like to, you can be really creative around it and make it a really positive thing initially. So, or throughout. So if you find a shoebox, you can decorate it how you like it, personalize it, put things on it that make you feel calm or that make that person feel calm, and then fill it with things that make you feel better. If potentially you could develop it together, so the person that displays the challenging behaviours and the person that you care for, you could make it together so you're both familiar with it and you both know the strategies that you could potentially use when things escalate, early warning signs are shown, and behaviours may become more difficult. So things that you might have, just examples, could be things like mindful breathing or calm breathing techniques. Mindful breathing can be really helpful to kind of bring us back to the present moment and center us in that moment. Maybe photos of nice memories. Crayons for scribbling can be really good for kind of letting out some of that extra energy. Again, if you're happy, kind of paper or newspaper for writing up, again, letting out some of that tension or that challenge or that that tension that's built up. You could have some paper for either writing down positive thoughts, or you could have some positive thoughts previously written down. So things like, I can take a deep breath, or this feeling will pass. Something to squeeze, like a stress ball maybe. Distraction games or puzzles, things that we know that we like or that person likes. You could also think about trying to develop some of the relaxation skills that Kirsten mentioned earlier. So maybe thinking about being in a relaxing place that's important to that person. Could be the beach, could be the forest, could be anywhere really that feels relaxing. And think about each of the senses in that area. So maybe what you can see, what you can hear, what you can feel, what you can touch, what you can taste, and what you can smell, and trying to get as much of a detailed picture of that in your mind as possible. You could have a postcard maybe to remind you of that, or you could draw a picture of it as a prompt to use at that moment in time. It could also be something like listening to relaxing music, or maybe punching a pillow. I appreciate you might not fit a whole pillow in a box, or throwing socks at a pillow, so maybe having some socks nearby, as that's quite a safe thing to do. Could be a reminder to do an activity with someone, such as going for a walk maybe. And also really important, if possible, to think about talking to someone you trust about how you feel at those moments. And another option could be kind of just having a card to remind you of maybe to stroke or play with a pet. Again, there's that sensory element of kind of stroking pets if you have them. So if that feels like a possibility, that's an option as well. I think the really important thing is to kind of learn and practice these skills when we're calm, to help feel more able to use them when we feel dysregulated. Because if we only ever go to the box when we're feeling really when things are really tricky, it can be hard to use some of their techniques. So try to also use them when we feel calm, revisiting it regularly so we know the ones that work well for us or for the person that we care for, and having those as our go-to ones initially when those early warning signs are picked up.
So sometimes with all your best efforts, there will be times when incidents occur. So unexpected things happen or things change that we've got no control over. So really it's important to have a plan as to what we're going to do, how we're going to respond when incidents do occur. So these reactive or red strategies are all about supporting our person when the behaviours do occur. And they're about keeping everyone safe. So keeping the person you care for safe, keeping yourself safe, and keeping others nearby safe when these behaviours occur. And the most important thing to remember really that is when people are in that crisis moment, that they're often really very anxious. And because lots of our communication is non-verbal, just being aware really of what your body and your face are communicating to that person, even if what you're saying is kind of the right things. So some of the things that might support the person, you might have got there at a moment when actually you can just distract or divert the behaviour. Always seek support from other people. Sometimes just having a change of person, someone different in the room can help. Act as calmly as you possibly can, even if you're not feeling calm inside, just lowering your voice, smiling, just encouraging that person to then mirror those things and lowering their voice and smiling back. Give them personal space if they need space. Listen to the person and what they're saying to you, but don't ask questions. So don't make any demands of the person at this time. Consider what your level of eye contact, touch and noise is. So again, that will be different for everybody. Some people maybe need sign of close contact when they're in that behaviour. Other people don't want anyone around. If appropriate, you might just withdraw from the situation. If that's the best thing to do to keep everyone safe and they're in a safe enough environment, then just, kind of move away. And at this point, it's really important not to attempt to teach new skills or ask any questions or to ask the person to think about what they're doing, because in that moment, they just won't be able to. And then that will cause the behaviour just to escalate further. And then think about really whether actually we need some support from other services. So whether you need support from other services in the moment or whether you need support on, ongoing to help manage the behaviour for yourselves and for the person. So sometimes when behaviour is really severely challenging and are being displayed, sometimes police are involved, and there might be a time and a place where actually that is the most appropriate, safe thing to do. It's a scary thing for the person and for their family, but that might be the most appropriate and safe thing to do for the person in that moment. But what we're trying to do through all the other things we talked about is to try and as much as possible to prevent getting to the red stage for needing our reactive strategies. And then once someone's calmed down, it can take time for someone to return to a calm state, and that means that there is a risk all the time of those behaviours for a period of time afterwards of those behaviours re-escalating quite easily. So our blue strategies, or our post-reactive strategies, are just the strategies about helping your person to return to their usual calm behaviour. It might be that some of the coping box strategies, that this is the time to use those now. So just check in that everyone's okay, giving the person time and space, and giving yourself time and space if you need to as well. They might need a bit of an opportunity to rest. Actually, it's really tiring. It's tiring for yourself managing it, and it's tiring for the person displaying those behaviours. Maybe planning some calm activities that you can do together. A change of environment might help. So just going out for a walk, getting some fresh air, just being away from the environment that the behaviour occurred in. And then later, when everyone is calm, just having that opportunity for reflection, to think about what happened and to think about what we can do in the future to maybe help prevent that happening. So that's in no way in a blaming, that's in a thinking about, well, this or this happened, maybe we could try this next time. And then also sharing that information with anyone who needs to know. So whether that's other services who are involved at that time, other family members, just people that might need to know that those kind of behaviours have happened.
And then we also wanted to think a little bit about the importance of self-care for carers as well. So we know that self-care is really important for carers, as we know that if your resources are low, it can be hard to provide the care to others. So looking after yourself is a really important part of looking after people that we care about, and this applies to everybody. So if we think about our own cups and ways of keeping our own cups full, so that we then are able to be there for others. So things that we might consider is taking a break and making time for yourself, maybe scheduling times for activities you enjoy. And it's okay to start that small, maybe 10 minutes here and there, and then building that up. But so important in terms of looking after ourselves and looking after the people we care for. Maybe talking to other people if you wish, and seeking support as needed. So that might be from family, friends, or social networks, social support networks, or healthcare professionals as needed. Also thinking about looking after your physical health, so eating well, keeping active. Sometimes these things are easy to say, harder to put in place, but important to kind of keep in mind. And also noticing positives in your relationship with the person you care for. Really important to notice throughout. And we know that it's hard to respond and manage behaviours that are challenging when we're feeling tired or drained, or things are difficult for us. So really important to think about our self-care and self-care for carers too. So then just the final few slides is we wanted to think about further support. So there are services out there that can support you in understanding and responding to your person's challenging behaviours. So you can speak to healthcare professionals involved in your person's care, and they will be able to support you in accessing appropriate support. So services to consider can be mental health and or learning disability crisis teams, especially at times of difficult, challenging behaviour, if things are really hard at that moment. Also thinking about mental health teams generally and referrals to those services as needed. The community team for people with learning disabilities. Sometimes you can self-refer, or otherwise a GP or care manager or another healthcare professional involved in your team may be able to refer. There's also child and adolescent learning disability services. These are available in many areas, and they're specifically for children and young people with learning disabilities, challenging behaviours, and or mental health needs. The services vary a little bit nationally. And there's obviously social care. So there's the children with learning disabilities team or learning disabilities social care team for adults. And they can also often have support services for behaviours that can be challenging. The carer support service. And then also, obviously, you can go to your GP. And also thinking about the importance of NHS 111, GP, and then as needed, and in terms of if you're concerned about the safety of the person you care for or the safety of yourself or other people, obviously 999 and A&E as needed. And hopefully with the support of maybe just individually or with the support of other services, you can develop a safety plan with healthcare professionals to ensure that you have crisis plans in place if things do escalate and become worrying or concerning. And then finally, just some resources. So you may be familiar with some of them. There's obviously the TSA support line, which can be used. There's the Challenging Behaviour Foundation, and we've just put the website addresses here as well in case they're helpful. Cerebra, the National Autistic Society, Mind, which is in relation to mental health difficulties and emotional health and support and strategies, the ADHD Foundation, and also Carers UK. You might also be aware of some other resources too, but they were the ones that we felt would be helpful. So I think that brings us to the end of our presentation. So thank you very much for listening, and we'll open up to questions.
Thank you very much, Jodie and Kirsten. That was excellent. Lots of great information there. So we do have a few questions, I think. Let me just I've lost my chat screen. Oh, I've got it there. So one from Mike, which I was actually wondering myself as well, actually. So I'm glad that Mike brought it up. So in the list of the ABC charts, we included someone called Josh, who was rocking and making repetitive noise. And Mike was asking if that is considered a behaviour that could be challenging, or is it more of a coping mechanism or a regulation mechanism?
I think it could be either, to be honest, and it very much depends on how you view it, or other people view it in that scenario. So it can absolutely just be a coping response, and it can be a sensory response, and that's absolutely fine. And it causes no challenges whatsoever, and if that's the case, that's absolutely fine. Obviously, you wouldn't need to do anything different. However, if it was something that you felt was concerning or could lead to maybe other behaviours potentially, that might be a point at which to consider that. So I think that's a really good question, because that might just be a completely normal and absolutely comforting and okay behaviour. And there might be for some people where that starts and then things change and escalate further. So it's very individualized.
Thank you. That makes sense. Thank you, Jodie. So we've got one more that's come through. And thank you, Marie, for sharing the link for that extra resource there. We'll be sure to have a look. So we've got a question here. What support can I get if a child social worker isn't listening to the caregiver or the parent? And this is in regards to behaviour with TSC.
I think certainly kind of from when I was a community nurse as well, I think talk to the other people that are around. So if you've got a nurse in your TS clinic that you see, or the TSA, or teachers at school, I think it's really about sometimes social care. I certainly, from my experience and being in meetings and things, say, well, it's behaviour, therefore the learning disability team can support you with the behaviour, without really appreciating that to be able to manage behaviours, to be able to support your person who's displaying those challenging behaviours, you need a break yourself, that you're not going to be able to do that if your resources and resilience in yourself are really low. So I think it's about having someone to stand up for you, to be able to say, actually, this person's doing the best that they absolutely possibly can with the resources that they've got. And actually, if we want the situation to be better for this person, then they need some more support, whether that's around respite services or, whatever, however that is. So I think it shouldn't be that you need to get someone else involved to support you in that. But I think that is probably what would help.
Thank you, Kirsten. And on that, if anyone does experience such a situation, do please get in touch with the TSA as well. We can't necessarily, change the situation immediately, but we can always help. In the past, we've offered things like supporting documents, or to speak to individuals who are part of that situation to help to get across to them. Thank you. So there's one from Louise, which we actually do get asked quite a lot on the TSA support line, so it's good that it's come up here. How do I get a referral to a TSC clinic if there isn't one in your area? And how long does a referral take to be acted on? So I think that's for Kirsten.
Yeah, that very much depends on the clinic. So I can talk about our clinic. So, and we accept referrals from mainly consultants, GPs, so anyone really that's working with the person, but we also accept referrals. We've had referrals from learning disability services, for example. And we, in our area, we will see people from, as long as someone's got a GP within England, we can see someone from anywhere in the country. Obviously, that does involve travel then, if someone lives in Manchester, for example, but we can see someone from anywhere. We do accept referrals. So to be honest, the GP doesn't even, if you need to go to a GP and say, I'd like a referral to this clinic, point them in the direction of our website, which tells them how to make the referral, and we'll accept a 2-line referral, to be honest. If it says this person's got TS and they need to be seen in a TS clinic, we'll accept that, and then we'll go and look for the information that we need to go around that. So, you know, letters and scans and kind of things to go around it. And in our clinic, I would suggest the waiting times it's probably 2 to 3 months. We try to see people as quickly as we can. If it's something that's more urgent, someone's suddenly got growing AMLs, for example, and needs treatment, then we'd definitely get them into clinic sooner. I mean, in our clinic, we have a clinic nearly every week, not quite every week, but nearly every week. So we do get through and see people, and we can be quite flexible as well. So we do like to meet people in person, but we are flexible doing virtual appointments as well, whether, you know, we do that every other year as virtual versus face-to-face. Or
Thank you, Kirsten. I'll say as well, Louise, and for everyone on the call, if you pop onto our website, you'll see a full list of all the TSC clinics, I should say, across the UK, and each one of those has the referral pathway. 9 times out of 10, it is speak to your GP and direct them to the clinic that's most local to you. But any doubts at all, you know, that's partly what we're here for, absolutely, on the TSA support line. So I think I've got a few more here. We're out of time, but let's just see how many we can get through. Oh, you know what? I think they're actually just people saying thank yous. That's nice. So thank you, Marie, Chris, and Joanne Brown. If there are any more questions, I'll leave it for a minute or so just to see. Do feel free to unmic yourself and ask as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be on the chat.
Hi, sorry, I've tried to type in a few times, but I can't get it to make sense, so I'm just going to ask the question. I'm hoping it's a general question. So in terms of the thought of the ABC chart that you have and thinking of trying to identify behaviours, I've got one that's 7, so quite young with a lot of the things that you're saying. But in terms of the behaviour part, you mentioned about taking them outside, distracting, using visuals and planning. When they don't work, what route do you try and go down? For example, like even just trying to leave the house to go and do an activity when they don't want to, and it's their behavior because it's very black and white and they want to do something else, and it kind of ruins it for the rest of everybody else. And I've obviously got another child, and it just makes it very unenjoyable that you don't actually want to go. So then everybody's missing out. And it's just, I can see the point of your ABC chart, but when them things don't work and you can already identify what's wrong because maybe it's not what they're wanting to do, how do you get around that? Or where do you look at ideas to get around that? Because I am at my wit's end of trying to think of things.
Thank you. I'll give that to Jodie and Kirsten.
Really good question, Ashley. I think it can be really hard, can't it, especially in those scenarios when lots is happening and you're trying lots of things. So well done for giving all those things a go, especially when things are hard. I wonder, just some ideas, but you may have already tried these, so please forgive me if you have. Is thinking about if it is in particular kind of like leaving the house or something like that, thinking about how your young person responds best to that, whether it's knowing a couple of days before, whether it's knowing the day before, or whether it's knowing a few hours before, and the information that you share with them and give them around that, and how much notice you give. Thinking a little bit about what information you share with them in terms of where you're going and that level of information and what feels helpful, and maybe kind of helping them to kind of think through that scenario in advance. So this is what we're likely to be doing, this is what the scenario might look like, and kind of having that proactive approach, which you may absolutely already do, to supporting them in those moments. If it feels particularly challenging, it could also be really beneficial to talk to your GP or think about other services that are available in your area, to meet with somebody who supports people with challenging behaviours regularly to think through some more kind of individualised responses too.
Yeah, we actually we're waiting for a referral we're waiting for the appointment from the referral to come through. So yeah, that's perfect.
I'm glad that's in place. Is there anything you would add, Kirsten?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. So I think we'll just start wrapping it up now. We've been 7 o'clock, but thank you very much, Geordie and Kirsten, indeed to everyone who's been on this call. One thing I noticed on that presentation in particular, which I was really pleased to see, is caring for the carers as well, which I think is something that so often gets ignored, especially within the incredible TSC community. You just want what's best for the individuals that you're caring for, but it's important to remember that everyone deserves to get care. So so thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much, and have a good night, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you for having us.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.